My name's Christian. My sobriety date is December 5th of 2024. I've been with Good Shepherd since, well, about 5 months now. Um, I'm just going to dive into the beginning of it, man. I was born in a small town named Troy, um, April 22nd, 1996. Uh, Both my parents were in my life until I was a preteen. I'm just going to be blunt about it. My father sexually molested me for 5 years, and when I brought it to my mother's attention and she wanted to take it to the police, uh, I never saw him again from the day that I told her about it. Um, the court proceedings went on. I went in front of a jury trying to get charges pressed, but at the end of the day, nothing ever came of it. Uh, Growing up, I was kind of a loner. I played a lot of video games. I was overweight. I didn't excel in school, so I never really had many friends. But the only crowd I really noticed I levitated towards was the outcasts, the kids who were sneaking off during their lunch break to smoke weed, getting in trouble at school, fighting. So I found out that I didn't really have a niche in school. I wasn't the jock or the smart kid or the popular kid, but I found out if I convinced people that I smoked weed and I drank and I did all this, that I found a crowd that I finally fit in with. Um, so I have an older sister. She's older by 3 years, and the first time I remember actually getting drunk, it was my 14th birthday party, and she was in high school and she actually was kind of a popular kid. So for my birthday, she took me to a house party, and for the first time I remember ever getting drunk, man, dude, I think I blacked out that night. I honestly couldn't tell you how it ended, but I do remember I loved the feeling of the drink. And it wasn't consistent. I'm not one of those guys who can say I felt I had arrived when I had the first drink, but it was anytime an opportunity presented itself to me, I pursued it and I chased it, and I'd almost be upset if I wasn't able to do what I expected in that aspect. Um, it wasn't until I got to be about 17 that this persona I made really flourished into actually smoking weed all the time and drinking every weekend. And I had myself convinced that I was some kind of stoner, that I was going to smoke for the rest of my life. Uh, and it's almost funny at this point in my life, I look down on other drug addicts. I thought if you were doing harder stuff or anything else, that you were lesser. And yeah, that's just kind of ironic in my perspective, man. Fast forward a couple years, my parents end up kicking me out because I refused to get a job or do anything productive, clean around the house. I dropped out of high school. Uh, so I moved in with my cousin, and with my cousin, we all worked fast food jobs, smoked weed every day, drank almost every day. I'm already to the point where I'm drinking at work, and they introduced me to cocaine. And in the drunk state that I was in, I tried it, man, and that's where I felt I did arrive. I fell in love with cocaine from the moment I tried it. Uh, so from the fast food, I ended up getting a job with my mom where I was making pretty good money, and I was spending about $600 a week on cocaine, marijuana, and alcohol. Well, I worked that job for about a year before they fired me for absence. I'd either be hungover or there was a couple times I got caught getting drunk and high coming into work. But so I had this horrible cocaine habit for about a year and then lost the job that was funding it all. Well, this is where I had a friend introduce me to meth. Kind of gave me the spiel that meth is the same thing, it's just cheaper and it lasts longer. But this was in 2018. I'd be 22 at this time. And, you know, I could drink for months on end, But when it came time to either not having money or it's unavailable, it was neither heads nor tails. If I had it, I could go without it. Same with the pot. But man, there was something that really gripped me with the meth. Uh, I prided myself at this point. I might have been living with girlfriends off and on, or uh, stealing from stores, petty stuff. I prided myself that I had never stolen from family or loved ones or just people in general. But that all changed once I found that drug, man. Nobody was safe. There was a time after I had tried meth and my mom had found out about this, got me into treatment. She let me come move back in home after treatment, and dude, I took that woman for everything she'd ever worked for. Uh, the one joy she had after work is she liked to come home, sit down, and watch movies on her laptop. And I told myself, oh, I can steal petty cash here or jewelry there, or, stuff she wouldn't really miss, but I wouldn't mess with this laptop or her TV because that's the only thing she really found any resolve in. And the day came where there was nothing left to steal. It was all locked up, or she would notice it, or it would be too much. And I took her fucking computer. And it was one of those situations where she came home and I helped her look for it, man. And I still feel horrible about it to this day. Um, Now, when I speak of all this, I'm referring to nasal and smoking application of the drug. About 3 years into my meth use, I got into an even worse crowd, and I tried the needle for the first time, man, and that's where life really spiraled out. Uh, Once I started shooting up, when I was ready to finally go to sleep and be done with a binge, it was difficult for me to fall asleep, and so I reached out to the guy I was buying my meth from, and he introduced me to heroin. And I swore up and down that the heroin was just going to be at the end of the binge to help me fall asleep, to get through all the shakes and the paranoia and everything, man. But long story short, I became heavily dependent upon opiates. And so I'm relatively young, man. So a lot of these guys tell me about their opiate addiction and spending years and years and years on heroin, but I was just unlucky enough to develop an addiction to opiates about 6 months before the fentanyl crisis started. Um, I'm going to try and focus on the solution in this story, but I will say this much. I'm 28 years old, and due to fentanyl, I have overdosed 9 times. I'm going to boil down the rest of the what it was like to. I ended up going to prison for 14 months over these drugs. I overdosed and they found some on me. I refused help and drug court because I knew I wasn't done getting high. I'd rather just go to prison, get the time done, and get home and just keep getting high, man. But after a while, after so many jail stays and prison and overdoses and seeing my mom cry and all of this, man, on June 12th of 2022, I had an incident where this was shortly after I had gotten out of prison, actually. I was out of prison less than 30 days. And in my psychosis, I assaulted and abducted a good friend of mine out of fear that they would go to the police over the drugs that I had. Um, and I ended up going to jail. They got away, called the cops on me, and I'm out of prison less than 30 days, and I'm sitting in jail on an F3 abduction and an assault charge. And it's crazy enough to say that's probably the best thing that had ever happened to me. Fast forward to when the hearings proceeded. The victim didn't show up to court, so the judge offered me to drop the abduction if I pled out to the assault case. He offered me 100 days in jail, and I asked him to give me 180 days in jail to serve half of it and to send me to treatment. So I asked him to still sit me in jail for almost that 100 days and then send me to treatment with the rest of the time over my head, man, because I was defeated. This drug has damn near taken my life from me. It had taken all of my living family from me. I was alone and I was broken. Uh, I ended up going to Woodhaven Residential Treatment here in Dayton, and I spent about 2.5 months there. Uh, I'd like to say I came to Good Shepherd Ministries the first time out of Woodhaven, but I didn't make that decision and I went to Full Circle. Well, I was at Full Circle probably 45, 60 days when my best friend, okay, so I had used with this girl for 5 years of my addiction. Um, and right before I went to prison, she got clean and she cut me off because I was still out there using, understandably. Well, back to where I was talking about, I'm back in Woodhaven. She reaches out to me. Here's I'm in treatment. Here's I'm doing good. She's got about 18 months sober, give or take at this time. And we reconnect and we start hanging out again, man. And our whole relationship, we only knew each other to the extent of either being high or trying to find a way to get high. But nonetheless, this was my best friend, man. And to finally see her sober and doing good was a beautiful sight. So we start hanging out. She picks me up from Woodhaven in Full Circle to go to meetings. We start developing this sober relationship, and we realize we're still friends on this side of things. Uh, I'm feeling good about my recovery at this point. I think I'm actually going to be able to manage it. But one day after group at Full Circle, I get a call to find out that in that time she had relapsed and not told me anything about it, and she ended up overdosing and dying. And I used that as an excuse to just throw everything away and go back out. Now, granted, through God's grace, man, I was smart enough to know that that's not what I needed to go back to. I remembered that event where I hurt my friend, the abduction and the assault thing. And after about 3 days of using, I went back to Woodhaven. And from there, I called Trap over at Good Shepherd. And he accepted me, and I ended up coming here. Now, in this time frame, I ended up meeting a girl, started dating her, and I didn't take Good Shepherd seriously. So it was just do what the program asked of me, hurry up, and then go spend time with her. I wasn't taking my program seriously, and I was making this woman my higher power. I didn't go super in length throughout my story previous to getting clean, but letting women be the center of my world has been an ongoing problem for me. And this again was my downfall, my first time at Good Shepherd, man. Well, I ended up leaving the program, moving in with her. It went good for about a year. And then when things started going south with her in the relationship, uh, when I was living with her, at no time was recovery a priority. She was always just a hair above it. If it came to either spending the day with her or even taking an hour out to go to a meeting, I'm spending the day with her. And so when things went south with her, I immediately turned to the only thing I knew, which was drugs and alcohol, man. This led to probably the worst year that I ever spent using. I had seen two of the worst overdoses of my life. The paramedics thought I was gone on the second one. I ended up totaling my vehicle that I had. It was in my name less than 30 days because I fell asleep behind the wheel. Went airborne and wrapped it around a telephone pole with 3 passengers in the car. Uh, Finally, I decided, man, it was time to go back to treatment. I'm without a car, so I don't have a means to get more drugs. Woman's out of my life. Friends don't even want to talk to me because all they ever wanted were rides, man. I was at square one and I was alone. So I ended up going back to a sober living for a while. where I did the MAT program. I was on Suboxone, but the program I was in, I won't name which one, but I will say you have to pay rent there, and they don't care quite literally if you're selling drugs to pay rent, as long as they get their money. And so I'm working at a bar as a bouncer to pay my rent. Uh, all my coworkers do drugs. I've got guys I'm in group with doing drugs, and I'm on Suboxone. So I'm on borrowed time before I put one in me, man. And this is probably 18 months since I'd left Good Shepherd the last time. I ended up calling Sean Trapp, and he told me if I went to detox and got off the Suboxone that I'd be welcome back. Well, I ended up going that route, going to Access here in Dayton for a few days, withdrawing from the Suboxone, and coming back here, man. And a lot of people across Dayton who have been through this program and haven't successfully completed it, they have a lot of mixed emotions and a lot of negative things to say about it, man. But there's a reason that I chose to come back here when I knew other places weren't working. In the time I've been here, man, I've been trusted with keys to most of our buildings, credit cards. I've redeveloped a relationship with my son. At first it feels like the mandatory meetings are kind of mundane and almost annoying to go to, but it's where I started developing a relationship with the people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Uh, and ever since I first came to treatment, I will say that is one thing that has kept me level-headed when I've stuck around is AA. For anyone struggling, the Dayton Alcoholics Anonymous community is beautiful, man. Anytime I've had any trouble or pain or problem, I've always had somebody to reach out to. And Good Shepherd has given me the opportunity to open all these doors across the city, across the county, and meet new people, man. Um, Today I have a conscious relationship with God, and that was hard fought for the longest time. Through my best friend dying, through my own overdoses, I always questioned, like, why does this shit happen? But today I have an understanding that it's not my will that gets to control all these things. When I'm running off my own will, it ends in overdoses and indictments. But today, if I just turn to God and ask Him to lead my day and for me to make the next right choice, everything seems to fall into place, man. Um, I've always been an anxious person, an overthinker. Uh, Today, I have peace. I have a clear mind. I'm able to just relax. And when something isn't going my way, I know it's going God's way. Um, I don't know, man. This is the first time I've ever really told my story. I just want to say I'm really grateful for Good Shepherd Ministries and Alcoholics Anonymous, because without those two things, I wouldn't be here.